The first time Adnan saw her, he thought his oxygen recycler was malfunctioning. Hallucinations were common when carbon dioxide levels spiked, and the creature standing just beyond the plasma barrier seemed too impossible to be real. She was tall, nearly 7 feet, with the lean, predatory build of a wolf crossed with something distinctly humanoid. Silver fur covered her muscular frame, and her eyes glowed amber in the harsh light of Kepler 442c's twin moons. Most unsettling of all, she stood perfectly upright, watching his ship with an intelligence that made Adnan's skin crawl. "Nehal," he called to his research partner over the comm. "Are you seeing this?" Nehal emerged from the geology lab, her dark hair tied back in its usual practical bun. She followed Adnan's gaze through the observation deck's reinforced viewport and froze. "That's not in any of the xenobiology reports," she said quietly. The creature, the Beastwoman as Adnan had begun thinking of her, remained motionless for another hour. Then, as the first sun crested the horizon, she simply turned and disappeared into the crystalline forest that surrounded their landing site. That was 3 weeks ago. She'd returned every single night since. "The pattern is consistent," Nehal noted, updating her research logs. "She arrives exactly 47 minutes after both suns set. She positions herself at the same spot, 23 meters from our perimeter. And she stares at—" Nehal glanced at Adnan. "Well, at you specifically." Adnan shifted uncomfortably. It was true. The Beastwoman's gaze never wavered from wherever he happened to be in the ship. When he moved from the bridge to the lab, her head turned to track him. When he worked late in the engine room, she relocated to maintain visual contact. "Maybe she's territorial," Adnan suggested, though he didn't believe it himself. This could be her hunting ground. For 3 weeks straight? Without showing any aggressive behavior? Nehal shook her head. "No, this is something else entirely." Their mission to Kepler 442c was supposed to be routine: establish a research outpost, catalog local flora and fauna, assess colonization potential. The planet seemed perfect: stable orbit, breathable atmosphere, abundant water. The only complication had been the complete absence of complex life forms in their preliminary scans. Apparently, their sensors weren't as thorough as they'd believed. On the 24th night, something changed. The Beastwoman approached closer, 10 meters from the barrier. She carried something in her clawed hands, a cluster of the local crystal formations that grew throughout the forest. "She's bringing you gifts," Nehal whispered, her voice filled with scientific fascination and personal unease. The crystals were beautiful, translucent blue structures that resonated with harmonic frequencies when touched. Adnan had collected several samples for analysis, noting their unique electromagnetic properties. Somehow the Beastwoman had observed this and brought him more. "This suggests advanced cognitive function," Nehal continued, her researcher instincts overriding her discomfort. "Tool use, pattern recognition, possibly even emotional intelligence." Adnan watched as the Beastwoman carefully arranged the crystals in a perfect geometric pattern, then stepped back and resumed her vigil. There was something almost hopeful in her posture. "She's trying to communicate," he realized. Over the following nights, the gifts became more elaborate. Intricate weavings of metallic plant fibers, carved bone fragments arranged in complex mathematical sequences. Most remarkably, a series of stone tablets bearing what could only be described as star charts, detailed maps of the local stellar neighborhood with their own system highlighted. "Adnan," Nehal said, her voice tight with excitement. "These charts show things we haven't discovered yet. Asteroid fields, gravitational anomalies, even what looks like evidence of artificial structures in neighboring systems. The implications were staggering. This wasn't just an intelligent species, it was a spacefaring one. The Beastwoman wasn't simply a curious local inhabitant. She was potentially a representative of an entire civilization. On the 31st night, Adnan made a decision that went against every safety protocol in the Colonial Fleet Handbook. He stepped outside the ship. The Beastwoman tensed as he approached the plasma barrier's edge but didn't retreat. Up close, Adnan could see the intricate patterns in her fur, the way her ears twitched at every sound, the unmistakable intelligence burning in those amber eyes. "I don't know if you can understand me," he said softly, placing his hand against the barrier. "But I want to understand you." The Beastwoman tilted her head, studying him with what seemed like surprise. Then, slowly, deliberately, she reached out and placed her own clawed hand opposite his, separated only by the thin energy field. "Adnan, what are you doing?" Nihal's voice crackled through his comm unit. "Something incredible," he replied, watching as the Beastwoman began to speak, not in words he could understand, but in a melodious, complex language that seemed to incorporate tonal variations and harmonic resonances. She was telling a story. Adnan was certain of it, even though he couldn't comprehend the words. Her gestures painted pictures in the air, ships traveling between stars, worlds connected by trade and communication, and then darkness, silence, the collapse of something vast and ancient. When she finished, the Beastwoman looked directly at Adnan with an expression of profound loneliness. She was the last of her kind, he realized, a sole survivor of a spacefaring civilization, drawn to these strange new visitors who had arrived on her world. She wasn't hunting them or studying them out of scientific curiosity. She was hoping, desperately hoping, for companionship, for connection with beings who might understand what it meant to travel between the stars. "Nihal," Adnan said quietly, never taking his eyes off the Beastwoman. "Cancel our departure schedule. We need to establish formal first contact protocols." "Adnan, that's completely outside our mission parameters." "Our mission was to assess colonization potential," he interrupted. "I'd say discovering that we're not alone in the universe qualifies as a significant assessment update." The Beastwoman seemed to understand something had changed. Her posture straightened, and for the first time in weeks, something that might have been hope flickered across her features. Humanity had always prided itself on its ability to adapt, to find connections in the most unlikely circumstances. Tonight, in the light of alien moons, that adaptability would be tested in ways the colonial fleet had never imagined. But as Adnan watched the Beastwoman carefully place another crystal formation at his feet, this one carved with unmistakable symbols of greeting and friendship, he knew they would meet that test successfully. After all, the universe was vast and often lonely. Everyone deserved companionship among the stars.